have with us today Kristin Gerst from Dallas, Texas, here to talk about how to make large profits off of notes and non-performing notes as well. So we should have a great presentation lined up for you guys today. And if you want to rewatch today's class, as well as any of our other classes that we host, you can find these replays on both Facebook and YouTube. And before we get into today's main presentation, I do just have a couple of announcements for you guys, kind of let you know a little bit about who we are at Quest, how we can help you, and some of our upcoming events and promotions that we have going on right now as well. So quick little commercial about us. Who is Quest Trust Company? At the core of our business, we are a self-directed IRA custodian. So we basically teach investors how to utilize their old 401ks and IRAs to truly diversify into investments outside of the stock market. So most Americans have no idea that you can actually hold non-traditional and privately held assets in your IRA account and still get all of the same great tax advantages that come with investing with IRAs. So at Quest, we teach our clients how to utilize their IRAs to invest into notes, private lending, commercial, multifamily deals. You name it, you can probably hold that type of asset in your IRA account. And once we kind of teach you how to do this, we'll also help to administrate the account for you. We've got about 20,000 clients nationwide. A lot of them are in Texas. That is where we are physically based, but we do operate in all 50 states, and we have clients all across the country as well. Now, we're a pretty good sized company. We've got about $2 billion in assets under our management. And the reason why I like to touch on that is because all of that $2 billion in assets that we have under our management is all privately held assets that our clients have self-directed their IRAs into. So there's a lot of people doing this, but most of the country has no idea that you can hold these types of assets in an IRA. And that's really honestly one of the biggest reasons why we are so passionate about putting on these classes and education and bringing in a lot of different guest speakers. So we can not only teach you about the different types of accounts that can be self-directed, but also the various investment strategies that real investors are using and kind of how to make sure that you do these investments properly, you do your own due diligence, and make sure that you have the right education before you enter into these investments. Now, that does segue perfectly into our disclaimer that we always have to give at the beginning of every presentation. Please be aware that at Quest, we do not give tax, legal, or investment advice. We put on a lot of education. We bring in a lot of different guest speakers. We teach over a lot of different topics, but please be aware, consult your attorney, consult a CPA before you enter into investments. And please, no matter what you do not rush into deals with individuals that you do not know and that you have not vetted yet. So always got to get that out of the way at the beginning. You know, self-directed IRAs really provide a lot of great opportunities for you to build wealth within these accounts, but you want to make sure that you are taking the right steps to do your own due diligence and structure these deals properly. And hopefully by attending some of our classes, you'll learn how to do that and meet some good people that you can add to your power team that will help you be successful. Now, today's class is just one of many webinars that we host here at Quest. We have a lot of in-person events, we have a lot of online education, and our biggest in-person event that we are hosting right now, well, as big as it can be with being COVID safe, is our self-directed IRA social. So we have actually brought back our in-person events. I'm really excited about it, but we definitely are taking very seriously COVID precautions to keep our clients and event attendees safe. So although we have brought back the in-person socials, we are actually limiting attendance at these events. We're not cramming 150 people into our classroom like, you guys know we did a lot of, before COVID, but we do have some really awesome in-person opportunities for you guys to come out, meet our team, network with other local investors. And our next self-directed IRA social is actually coming up this upcoming Tuesday. It's in Austin, Texas, right there in our office on September 14th at 6:30 p.m. At this presentation in Austin, we will be talking about private lending. It'll be actually be taught by the president of our company, Nathan Long. So this will be a great presentation. But if you are not in Austin and you want to watch our presentation on Tuesday, you can watch it online through Zoom. After my announcements, I'll plug some links for you guys here in the Zoom chat, but be sure to check that out. If you want to attend, please RSVP. We are limiting attendance. We hit our cap for Houston. We're really close to hitting our cap for Dallas there on September 21st. Austin, we've still got some space for you guys, but make sure to get that RSVP. We're really excited to be hosting these events in person again. And, hopefully as things progress in the next few months, we'll be able to open up attendance a little bit more, but just make sure if you want to attend in person, get your RSVP. And if you want to attend online, you can watch that through Zoom as well. Now, some of our other educational opportunities that we have coming up for you guys, we host a lot of webinars. We host weekly classes online on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We host self-directed IRA Saturdays, which you guys are here for right here today. And we also host a really awesome event. It is our virtual networking happy hour. It's twice a month. It's on the first and third Wednesday of every single month. And where our educational webinars are more so set up as a Zoom webinar where we can't see your faces, you can't really, unmute yourself and talk to us. The virtual networking happy hours are awesome. They are set up as a Zoom meeting. Everyone gets a chance to share their cameras. Everyone gets a chance to introduce themselves to the group. And at the end of all the introductions, we open it up for conversations. And this virtual networking happy hour, we've been doing it for about a year now. It's really taken off. It's one of our most popular online events that we host. So make sure to check out the links that I'll post for you guys here after my announcements, and be sure to get your RSVP for those and check out our other events that we have going online on our website. Now, we also have a promotion going on from now through the end of this month. We're giving away money. If you're looking at getting started with Quest, or if you're a current client looking to do your next investment, looking to move some more funds over, we have our rewards for deposits promotion going on right now through the end of this month. So it does end pretty soon. If you guys are interested in this promotion, just be sure to reach out to us. I'll post my email here in the chat after the end of my announcements, and reach out to us, schedule a consultation. It's really easy to set up a call with us, and we can really walk you through everything that you need to know one-on-one to either get started, get ready to get started, or if you're just really looking to learn more about how this works, we'll sit down with you and have a one-on-one conversation. That way you can learn everything that you need to know and have the right steps to go ahead and get started in self-directing your IRA. We also have a referral program, guys. In real estate, this business is all about word of mouth, right? It's really awesome because at Quest, we've been able to help a lot of people build wealth and really honestly change the trajectory of your retirement savings and actually be able to help you to be able to retire one day. So if this has helped you out in your life, do us a favor, share it with your friends, share it with your colleagues, your family. You never know who might have money sitting in an IRA that's looking to do something better with it than investments that they don't really have control over. So if you refer someone over to Quest, we'll actually give you both a credit towards your account, and there's no limit to the number of people that you refer. So if you have questions about that, just reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to help. Now, if you have questions, reach out to us. It is so easy to get a hold of us here at Quest. We have a live chat feature through our website. Our IRA specialists are on that every single day of the week during our business hours. Or you can give us a call, send us an email. I'll put all of this information in the Zoom chat here in a minute. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into today's main presentation with Kristin Gerst, based out of Dallas, Texas. Guys, if you have not seen Kristin present over Investing into Notes, her presentations are some of our most popular note presentations that we host on our platform. So Kristin, I'm really excited to have you here today. If you guys have questions, put them in the Q&A box. We'll come back on at the end and do some Q&A. And Kristin, that's all I've got. So go ahead and take it away.
All right, let me get my presentation up here going. I gotta move this thing over. And hey, everybody. I am so excited to be here. I absolutely love Quest and I love presenting to Quest. For any of you who haven't heard me talk about it already, I am quickly building up my children's Coverdale ESA accounts with Quest. I have one for each son, they're both in private school right now. And my Coverdale accounts, any profits that I make in those accounts can be used towards their private school and then also towards university and grad school up until the age of 30. So I highly recommend you, if you are a parent out there and you're looking for a fast way to build up their education accounts, the Coverdale ESA account with Quest is the way to go. So we're going to be talking about non-performing notes, and I've talked about it in the past. We're going to kind of breeze through some of the things I've talked about in the past and go into some of the more, dive deeper into how do you find these things? Because as a preface for non-performing notes, one would have thought when the pandemic hit, I was like, oh my gosh, the tsunami's coming. We're just going to have a heyday of non-performing notes. And it hasn't been the case. January, February, I was able to pick up non-performing notes at pretty decent prices, 60% of unpaid principal balance. Whereas the height of the pandemic a year ago, 6 months ago, they were wanting 80 and 90% of unpaid principal balance, which is pretty high. And we do see a change in that coming in the market very, very soon, especially with kind of a better idea of the moratoriums being lifted and where we're going. So non-performing notes are very, very exciting, especially with foreclosures on the rise, because sometimes these banks and funds just need to get rid of these toxic assets that they have on their books. So the acronyms for non-performing notes, NPNs is usually typically what I use, non-performing notes, or non-performing assets, NPAs, or NPLs, non-performing loans, all the same thing. In this, I'm going to be talking about residential 1 to 4 family, kind of the easy, bread and butter of the stuff that most investors, they're extremely easy to trade. There's a lot of investors who are looking for residential 1 to 4 family homes. There's a lot of buyers looking for 1 to 4 family homes. So that's what I'm focused on. Are there non-performing notes for commercial? Yes. Are there non-performing notes for industrial? Yes. So go down the gamut. You can find all of these. And if you have experience in commercial property, maybe you want to parlay this into it. All of these tricks that I'm going to be telling you right now will work for any, but I'm primarily focused on residential. So these can be highly profitable, but they are also can be risky, and you have to know what those risks are. If you know what the risks are, then you can avoid all of those pitfalls and you can just focus on your profits. 95% of note investors are in the States. Most people know my logo down at the bottom, Capricorn Mortgage Investments. I buy performing mortgages through Capricorn. My other side of just, my personal investments, I'm looking at non-performing notes just because the profits are so much higher. The strategies we look at when doing non-performing notes, one, we do a loan modification or refinance. Right now, 2 years ago, that was not my main goal. I don't want to, because as a performing note buyer, I wasn't going to pay as much for a loan modification that I would for, say, a loan that had never gone bad. A loan modification is when they get behind in their payments. And so you've got to bring back, you've got to add all of those missed payments in, and you give them a brand new loan starting from day one. It's highly profitable. It's a great way to do things. But knowing that I want the exit strategy to sell that loan down the road, loan modification wasn't my primary focus. But now with all of the forbearance, there are going to be tons of loan modifications out there. And so it's not such a stigma that it was before the pandemic. Short sale is probably my favorite or the best. This happens for me about 50 to 60% of the time. If you go in and you negotiate and you kind of say, well, you owe all of this money to keep this house, and they're like, well, I've been trying to sell it, but I can't get as much for it. The next question is, how much can you get for it? Because while they might owe $120,000 in order to bring that loan current and keep that house, you only purchased it for $60,000. So if you can quickly, after buying that note, sell it off for, say, $100,000, that's a $40,000 profit without really doing much work. And it's fast. So those are pretty fun. Deed in lieu of foreclosure is primarily where I go. I try to, if I can get this property back. I find that if I don't get the deed in lieu, then they have usually found a we buy, ugly houses person to buy that property, and I get paid off. So, even if I'm picking it up at 60 cents on the dollar, I've still made a really great return, even if they decide not to give me that deed in lieu and just sell it to an investor. The other way, instead of that, is, you get the deed in lieu back. And then you can, of course, wholesale it as an REO, or you can fix it up, keep it as a rental. You can fix it up. You can owner finance it. You can fix it up and sell it retail. So you've got a lot of exit strategies once you get that deed in lieu of foreclosure back. At a very last resort, I use foreclosure. And again, that's going to depend on, a lot will depend on what the situation is with the borrower. And are they still living in the house? Are they not? What state is it located in? But foreclosure is always a last resort. Keep that in mind. I much prefer giving cash for keys. You will make more money in the long run if you pay those people to get out of the house and you get a deed in lieu of foreclosure back quickly. Non-performing notes versus REOs. A lot of people want to understand the difference. It's real property versus a piece of paper. So for an REO, that is a bank-owned foreclosure. That is something that the lender has taken back. It is foreclosed on. It has clear title. When you're buying a non-performing note, you're not buying that property. You're buying a piece of paper, and that piece of paper is not performing. And in order to get clear title on it, you are going to have to foreclose on it or get a deed in lieu of foreclosure back on it. So know the difference. Remember, REOs or foreclosure, that's real property. You're getting the house. Non-performing notes, we're talking about buying a piece of paper. And title policy. You don't get a title policy when you purchase a non-performing note. Now, it will come with the existing lender's policy that was created at the time of a loan. If indeed a lender's policy was created at the time of a loan, always something to verify. But you're buying something that's already defunct. Obviously, it has issues. It most likely has liens on it, be it property taxes or be it utility liens. There are mechanics liens. There can be any type of liens on that. And of course, the title policy is going to do you little to no good anyways, as as all of those things have accrued since that loan was created. But just remember, you're not getting clear title, and so you need to be very careful and do your due diligence when buying non-performing notes. Time can be super fast or time can be super slow. I recently just picked up a couple non-performing notes. They were still in the property, the borrowers are still in the property. It looks like both are getting current. And so with those two, I'm probably going to be able to modify one next month. And the other one looks like it's going to be current by November payment. And if that's the case, I'll be able to sell that one right away, which is my end strategy for these two. I'm not planning on holding them for very long. I really only wanted to hold them for about 6 months. Now I can do that because they are Texas non-performing notes. I've got a lot of control in Texas. I know how fast I can foreclose on something, how fast I can get somebody out of a property. If we're talking about a different state, for example, New York is a very, very, very long time to foreclose. You need to know that going, all right, if I buy this thing, I'm going to have these funds tied up for some amount of time. Could it be fast? It could, but most likely any rational human being would say that it's going to be 12 to 18 months on the minimum. And some investors are predicting longer just because of the backlogs in the court system to get a foreclosure through. And when you're dealing in states where it takes a long time to foreclose on homeowners and it takes a long time to evict somebody from a piece of property, they know that. And so it might be a strategic option for them to just, okay, well, we're just going to stay in here and live for free as long as we can. Our credit's already shot anyways, yada, yada, yada. Financing. Difference between financing for a non-performing note and an REO. You can get financing easily for an REO. You want to pick up a foreclosure, you want to pick up a piece of real property. There are so many people throwing money at you to go buy that real estate. When you're dealing with a non-performing note, it is not as easy. A lot of investors need to start out with cash to buy them. And they need to kind of prove that they're going to follow through and say, okay, here's my track record. I have successfully bought, these 5 non-performing notes in the last few months. Now, a lot of you are out there going, oh my gosh, I need all this cash. I have bought them for super, super cheap, $1,500. I know of one right now. I think she probably let it go for $200 or $300 just for this note, and it's down, outside of Madisonville, Texas. There are some issues with that property, some large issues, and I'm not sure what the investor's exit strategy would be for it. But you could probably make some pretty good money on that, on that note, if you had the right exit strategy in mind. So keep that in mind, that financing is hard to get. Typically, and here are just some examples. These are actually non-performing notes that I wholesaled in the past. These are the prices that I picked them up at. So, and then I just marked them up. So you can always do that. So let's say that you get a tape, and this is an example of what a tape looks like, a mortgage tape. It's where we will have, here's the information about the note. The unpaid principal balance is right here in the center. BPO or CMA will tell you what that property is worth. So this is what was owed, and this over here in the green is the price that I paid for that non-performing note. And in most cases, I was able to mark it up. I think this bottom one, I marked it up maybe $2,000. And the top two, I think I marked them up 3 to 5. I don't really remember. Just because it's like 2 years ago. So when you're looking at this, though, this is a really great way, especially dealing with your IRA. If you want to build quick profits tax-free, okay, so maybe you can't afford all of these, but with your IRA funds that are already there, maybe you can wholesale off these two, right? These two in New York to another investor, right? Get him to buy these for, say, $18,000 a piece or something like that. And then this bottom one, with those profits, you can keep this one free and clear in your IRA. Or you could wholesale all 3 and just have a bunch of cash sitting in there. But again, that's kind of the thing you need to look at, where, yes, I'm teaching right now on how to find these things, how to negotiate them, and how to work them out. Your number one, if you are just looking to quickly build up some cash in your IRA, is to buy and sell these non-performing notes out. And really, you just put them under contract from your self-directed IRA, and then you're going to contract to sell it to the investor. So let's talk about the pitfalls. And these are things that you really do need to pay attention to. And if everybody's here from Texas, which, you may or may not be, Texas is really hard to buy in because we don't have a lot of pitfalls. Places that are more difficult to buy in, you can get a lot of great deals. So remember that, just because, this is a piece of paper. And in today's day and age, I have found realtors, I've found contractors, I have found inspectors, I have found people just go walk property from me in Facebook, in Facebook groups. So, I was looking, I did a couple notes up in Pittsburgh. Well, I didn't know anything about Pittsburgh. So my first thing was, all right, well, let me learn everything about Pittsburgh. And, is this a place that the water bills follow the buyer, or follow like the property, or they follow the person who took the bill out in their name? No, it stays with the property. So if you have somebody a tenant, or if you have somebody, a homeowner, that leaves $1,000 water bill behind, you got to pay that water bill in order to get clear title. So all of these things you just have to keep in mind. And every single county, every single city could be different. The timelines are different. The timelines, as we know, are different in Harris County to get a foreclosure and eviction than they are for Dallas County here in the great state of Texas. So if you are looking at states all over the nation, make sure that you know specifically what's not only going on in that state, but what's going on in that county and what's going on in that city, especially if it's a large city. Knowing which judge you're going to get could make a big difference in how fast you're going to get your eviction or your foreclosure approved. So number one pitfall to find unpaid property taxes. You can do this online from anywhere. So all you have to do is look up typically the county or the municipality that's collecting taxes. Remember that not every city in the state, including in Dallas County, not every city collects taxes the same way. If you're in the city of Garland, you might have two different taxing entities, just for example. The same thing goes for any other county in the nation. So make sure when you're searching out property taxes, you can find them. Now, not everybody is online, and sometimes it requires a phone call, and just be prepared. Hey, I might have to make a phone call over unpaid property taxes. Unpaid water bills is another one. If you have an unpaid water bill, depending on where you're at, which municipality, that water bill might stay with that property. That means that when you come in, you're going to have to pay that water bill off in addition. Otherwise, that has to be foreclosed on. IRS tax liens. If you find an IRS tax lien, you are going to have to foreclose on that property. Now, a lot of people would go ahead and take the deed in lieu anyways, take possession of the property. Maybe they're going to rent it out to somebody for a little while they go through that foreclosure. All of those are possibilities. I like to go ahead and get that deed in lieu signed and notarized and take possession back of the property. But I do not record that deed in lieu until I get the IRS tax lien officially removed through foreclosure. So that's a very important distinction. And remember, I am not an attorney. I hire attorneys, and I make sure wherever I'm at that I've got a licensed state attorney for that state that can help me with any of these proceedings. And you want to ask the question you want to know, because just because it flies in Texas doesn't mean it flies in Florida. Just because it flies in Florida doesn't mean Ohio. It works in Ohio. And so you don't want to get caught doing something illegal, getting fined, or, worse, having this non-performing note that you can't foreclose on because you just didn't make a call to an attorney, pay him $100, a couple $100, and ask him a question. Property condition in ARV. This is something that, we can't see what these properties look like on the inside. We can see what they look like on the outside. Now, I love buying ones that are already vacant. So if you can find a non-performing note, a lot of times I will have a local realtor drive by that property and just go, hey, can you just check and see if it's vacant? If it is vacant, can you pop inside and just take some photos for me? So sometimes they have a charge for that, sometimes not. Sometimes they're going to be your realtor that lists it afterwards. And I rely heavily on realtors in different markets to help out with that. So ARV is another one. Obviously, you want to make sure that you run your comps. I personally use Propelio because I was an ex-Propelio personality. So I'm a big believer in them, but I also love Steve Liang over at Real Estate IQ. They've got a great piece of software as well. I've tried that one out, especially to fill in holes. So it's not a bad idea to be, especially if you're doing high volume all over the nation. It's not a bad idea to be members of multiple of those online. But you want to be a member. Yeah, they've got lists and everything to find properties. But the biggest thing is being able to run your own comps, because you're talking about going through, in some cases, you might need to run 20 or 30 ARVs. And in order to do that, you need to be able to run your own comps. A big pitfall is basic human nature. I gave up on, giving out multiple second chances. I give one chance, which I know sounds harsh and hard. But I've had, a couple of notes that, it ended up, one in particular, he developed a gambling problem. And the wife didn't know about it. And she was working 2 nursing jobs and she couldn't understand why the mortgage was always late. And then I found out she didn't know that the mortgage was late for a long time. So he was never going to quit until I really, I gave him probably 3 chances to get caught up. And finally I just said, hey, it's enough. And they ended up selling and paying me off 100%. They sold to We Buy Ugly Houses people. But just getting any headaches like that off your books, because, he would pay every 4 or 5 months. And, it's just not good business. So just remember, basic human nature, the brand new people, they could swear they're going to pay all they want. But just be smart, have rules, and, don't cross the line. A big pitfall is judicial versus non-judicial states. We in Texas are blessed to live in a non-judicial state. That means that we do not have to go ask a judge's permission to foreclose on a piece of property. We simply go down, we go to the county and we say, yes, we're going to put this up for auction, in 30 days, whatever it is. In a judicial state, there's an extra step. So you first have to get a court date. Then you get to go in. Once you get that court date, you have to go sit before a judge, and then he'll give you permission. And then after you get permission, then you can go file down to the county and say that you're going to auction off the house. But it's a multi-step purpose. Depending on what state you're in, it can take a long time to get that court date on the front end. And then you got to go, and then you still got to foreclose on it. And then there's redemption periods and all of that. And a lot of that you're going to find in these judicial ones. So make sure that, if you see non-judicial state, it's pretty good. Still you want to research, okay, how long is it going to take me to get this house back? But when you see judicial, pay extra attention, because it is going to take you longer, and you're going to make sure to really bid accordingly. And we'll go through that, especially for, because obviously if I'm not going to have to hold this property as long without getting it back, I can pay more for it. So in a state where I know it's going to take possibly 2 years to get that property back, I don't really want to be bidding, say, 60% of unpaid principal balance. Also remember that eviction, just because foreclosure happens, doesn't mean that they're out of the property. And so then you have to go back and evict them. And sometimes that process can take a long time, depending on which state and even which county or which municipality you're in. So always research those major pitfalls before jumping into buying a note. Here's a nice little map I like to show. The grays here, those are non-judicial. Judicial are the blue. You'll find most of them up here in the Northeast. Yes, Florida is a judicial state. I got to tell you, it's one of my most popular. So many investors are looking for Florida non-performing. Ohio is another one. And and we are surrounded by three judicial states. And, for me personally, I like Oklahoma. So Oklahoma is, not that bad when it comes to foreclosing. It's still only about 4 to 6 months. But again, it's, research. I also suggest that when you're looking for non-performing notes, let's say that you have a bunch of friends or family, here in Missouri, and, and it might be Kansas City, or it might be St. Louis. If you've got people on the ground, that's not a bad place to start looking for non-performing notes. And Texas right here is kind of the holy grail. It's super easy. It's super easy to foreclose. It's super easy to evict. And, we've got tons of investors who are looking to buy properties. So, once you do get the property back, it's easy to move. Obviously, going to these other, unknowns for you, it could take longer on all of those fronts. So just make sure, you're doing your due diligence and about how long it's going to take to one, evict, or to one, foreclose, two, evict, and then three, to sell that note. All right, the process of buying a non-performing note. One, you've got to get a mortgage tape. And we'll go through that in a minute. Two, organize an initial due diligence. This is, and I'm going to go through like some tips of when I look at this, but it's very important that this initial due diligence is fast. Oftentimes, I'm not the only one getting this tape. And if I'm going against, in the tape, in some cases, yeah, it's nice when it just has maybe 20 or 30 assets on it. But when it has more than 20 or 30 assets on it, and I've had tapes that have 500 or 1,000 assets on it, it can take a long time to go through that. So I've got a nice way that I do it to kind of get through it fast and really narrow everything down. You're going to make your offer or offers. Oftentimes I just make a new column right on that mortgage tape. And mortgage tape is an Excel document. It's an Excel document like with just lines. I'll show you what one looks like here. Full due diligence after you make the offer and it's accepted. I should caveat that. So you make the offer, they accept your offers, and they won't necessarily accept every one, but maybe you made 15 offers and they're accepting 10. Now you get to do your full due diligence. And they give you several weeks to do that. It's not just, oh, I made an offer, they've accepted it, and now I got to, send them money. No, you've got several weeks. And depending on how many you buy, you could have more time. So I've gotten as many, I got 45 days once of due diligence. And next, you're going to wire your funds. You do wire funds. Oftentimes, I wire directly to a bank. I kind of am nervous about doing that sometimes. I always encourage people to wire to a title company or to a third-party escrow. Again, that's a discussion between you and the seller, but I have wired funds directly to banks before. And then once you wire the funds, they have like 24 hours to overnight the original documents. So you'll get, most of what I get is in soft copy, but there are some original documents that you need, such as notes, allonges. The assignments of lien are typically recorded, so that's not a huge issue. But just, original warranty deeds and deed of trust, those are also typically recorded. But any part of that, of the note sale that maybe wasn't recorded, that is important to have. And then the last part, after you get those original documents, you need to get to work and get that note performing, or you need to take that note back and then decide what you're doing with that property. So non-performing notes, how to get them? Where do you find them? Small banks and credit unions. And I'm going to give everybody this list. If you're watching right now, screenshot this, take a picture with your phone. And this is where I like to go fishing for new banks. And there is some work in this, but it's TV work. So that's good. So if I go here, and can everybody still see that I am sharing? You are screen sharing.
All we see is your PowerPoint.
That's what I was afraid of. Hold on. And then I'm going to screen share. And screen share this. Okay. So when I go to this website, these are all, and this says Texas banks. You can go to home and go to all US bank locations. All banks that are FDIC insured are required to have all of their reports filed quarterly. So all of this is a matter of public information. This is all free to you. What do I like to do? I like to go down, like these big banks, you know, there's so many people to talk to. I like to go to smaller banks. I don't know. I'm just going to randomly pick something. How about this? InvestR Bank. Never heard of it. Has 5 branches. Somewhere in Texas. Looks like we're kind of down south. What is that? Alice. It's somewhere, I think it's like Corpus, Victoria. You know, you've got Houston, Dickinson. Cool. So their total assets are not looking too shabby. What is that? 2 billion in assets? You know, I'm liking that. When I first go to one of these banks, you click on more information. And then once I get into more information, this is where you get to see kind of the gold. So I go down here and I like to go see past due non-accrual assets. And so you can go see literally how much that they have that's in arrears of 30 to 90 days for 1 to 4 family residential, which is what I'm looking to buy. So I go in there and I'm like, wow, look at this, 1.2 million. Okay, they got some stuff that they might, you know, want to get rid of. I look at, I'm like, all right, well, what do they got in 90 days? 90 to 61,000. It's not very much. It's kind of sad. But we're still in 30 to 90 days. And so, you know, maybe they would be willing to get rid of those. I also like to look at this past due non-accrual loans that are partially owned by the government. This is important because if something is Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac secured, if it goes bad, they just send that to the government, right? They can just write that off and it goes to the government. So I like to see how much. Look at this. We've got loans that are U.S. government wholly or partially guaranteed. They have none of their loans. How crazy is that? I don't think I've ever seen that. Anyways, so when you're looking at this, you can go back and see, all right, so this is, I'm probably going to put this one on my list to call. This would be a good one. I do like seeing that. The other thing, you can always go down here. I like seeing how non-current loans to loans, right? So I want to see what percentage that these banks have of, you know, bad loans. So if I'm looking percentage of non-current in real estate loans, all right, well, that's not too bad, right? That's not too bad. And, you know, here's my rank. You know, it's so you can click on this and this can take you down. Obviously, this can take you down a wormhole like you've never believed. This is how sorted they have all this. But what do I like this? Banks ranked by non-current loans to loans. Well, this gets fun because now I've got, the number one banking, 36% of mid-first banks loans are non-current. You know, so you can start going on all of these. Obviously, when you're talking about 12, 13, 14, I mean, we could go down a wormhole for hours here. Obviously, this is why I said today you're on the couch, you're watching football. What are we doing? We're clicking on US bank locations, seeing who's got a lot of debt on their books that's not performing. Boom. So that's just a couple of the things you can do. I'm going to pop back over to. So moving on, I love that website. The other suggestions on where to find banks and credit unions that have assets. And remember, don't waste time just going down the list and calling these banks. Get in there, click on the few places that I showed you to click on, and really do your research and due diligence on these banks. Find the ones that already have the stuff. Find the ones, there's a whole list of ones that routinely sell off their non-performing loans. They charge these things off. Okay, well, definitely go look at how much they have in charge-offs, because if they have a history of charging these things off, typically they might go sell some more in the future. Another thing that I like to do is just know that all of these small banks and credit unions are bought and sold all the time. There are constantly new banks being formed. And anytime you've got a bank buying up another bank, not all of their assets are going to fit in that big bank's wheelhouse. And so if they have a bunch of assets where they're just kind of like, even if they're sometimes performing, they're like, we don't really want those. We don't want to hold on to those. We don't want to service those. Sometimes they have a minimum dollar threshold. I've got a bunch of banks that I deal with that they only want loans that are over $100,000, because anything less than that is too expensive for them to actually service. So just communicating with these banks and credit unions and finding the ones that have these assets to sell. So a lot of times I will read press releases and I will find out which banks are being bought by which other banks. And then I call the bank that did the buying and go, hey, do you all have anything you want to get rid of? Hey, I saw you picked up this bank. I did a ton of business 2-3 years ago with a bank just like that. And they went out, they bankrupted, they got bought out, and they were required to kind of sell off all of these toxic assets. And so I went in and, I did REOs, I did non-performing notes, and, just kind of met the right guy. So who do you ask to speak to? Asset managers. So you're looking for asset managers for non-performing loans or assets. We are specifically looking for non-performing notes. Can you go in and ask for the asset manager for REOs? You can, but you are not going to get this person. So you're looking for somebody who specifically handles the non-performing loans or assets, and make sure that you ask for that. I also like to say, what do you have? Because I don't want to waste this guy's time and have him irritated at me when I'm not even going to look at the tape. Because I have one guy that I do a lot of business with, and the last time I called, he goes, yeah, I got something, but you're not going to like it. It's all farm equipment. And I'm like, yeah, what am I going to do with farm equipment? I don't know how to wholesale off farm equipment or the notes on farm equipment. So what should you say? I am looking to purchase some non-performing notes. Now, I have it abbreviated here. Make sure you say non-performing mortgage notes. Be specific like that. Depending on which secretary you talk to, she might only know them as NPLs, or non-performing loans, or non-performing assets. So if there's hesitation on that, I try to go, yeah, do you have any non-performing assets right now? I'll ask it a second time a different way. And if I get a no, that's fine. A lot of times when these banks are being inspected, they know that, all right, we just had all of these loans go bad, but the bank examiner's coming in and we've got to get our ratio from non-current and to current. We've got to improve that by 20%. So they're going to send you a tape and they're going to know that they need to sell it. I've had some banks that really didn't need to sell. And so that's when you're kind of looking at this high, these high ask prices. The next thing, if they say no, I'm like, okay, do you think you might have some next month or the month after? Usually these things go in cycles. So I get no's from some of these guys, in October, but come November, I'm going to get a yes. So make sure and just put them on, oh, no, for this date. But if I call them back, they might. And just say, hey, do you think you're going to have some down the line? I always ask that question. If you get a tape and there is no pricing expectations on it, ask what the pricing expectations for those notes are. A lot of times they're going to give those to you, and if they come back and they're like, oh, well, we're really looking for 85% of unpaid principal balance. Can you make money off of that? Yeah. What did I pick up my recent Texas non-performing loans at? 80%. Was that good? Yeah, because I knew that I could make some really great money on 80% of 80% of unpaid principal balance. Does that mean that every state for New York State, would I pay anywhere close to that? No. I just don't even want to deal with headaches that would be going on in New York right now. But I think for somebody who is willing to do that, I bet you could pick them up at 20 or 30 cents on the dollar. It would be my guess. Most of what I'm seeing right now is riddled with New York. I mean riddled with it. Anything that's going to be, where I would want to buy, like if it was in one of the 5 boroughs, I've been cautioned that anything that was, I have some investor friends who bought non-performing notes before the pandemic, and they still haven't seen a judge, even though they had court dates set before the pandemic, and they still haven't seen a judge. And so they're kind of going, 5 boroughs, it could be 2 to 3 years before we actually get anything back from those. So initial due diligence. And I've got a tape that I'm going to fast forward to here right after we go through this. So you can kind of see what I do. First, you're going to organize by state. Then you're going to remove any unwanted state or city. So, if I'm seriously only wanting, okay, I want Texas, I want Oklahoma, I want Florida, I want Georgia, I want Tennessee, right? I want those 5. I'll take Illinois too, but, it better be a good deal. Stuff like that, right? So I'm going to go through, I'm first going to organize by state. Then I'm going to just hack off anything that, I know that I'm not really interested in, and I don't want to waste my time reviewing. Then remove any note with unwanted traits. So, and I'm not sure, I randomly picked a tape. It was something that I got, 2-3 months ago. And looking at that tape, I don't really remember if they were first lien, second lien, contract for deed. So just remember when you're bidding on things that the type of loan you're bidding on, a contract for deed is a lot less valuable than a actual mortgage. Remember that, because somebody is going to come up to you and go, oh yeah, here's contract for deed. And and they say the reason is that you can foreclose on it faster. Not necessarily. And you need to know that state by state. In most cases, you've got to go through foreclosure process just the same. So I know that if I pick up any contract for deed, I'm going to want to make sure that I can get them refinanced into an actual mortgage so that my piece of paper is more valuable should I decide to sell it down the line. Then I go through and I remove any house with unwanted traits. A lot of times, like the really, really old houses, the ones built in like 1900, those are pretty risky to buy. They're also harder to sell depending on where you're at, because a lot of experienced investors who would buy those know that they're money pits. So if you're going to buy something that was built in 1900, actually renovating that thing could cost you 3 times what a house built in 1970 would cost. So just keep that in mind that, a lot of times I get a little weary of old houses. Now, that's not 100% true. I mean, if I can get a really great deal on it, I don't care. But a lot of times, I'm going to take those off the list. I run comparable sales. I will go through and use that, I'll use Propelio software, some other software to find out what that actual BPO is. You can use the BPO that they give you. right? Almost all of them will give you what they believe that property to be worth. But what I found is a lot of times they're just going to Zillow, which doesn't work in Texas, which is great because they don't know that. And it can sometimes work in your favor or not. I like to run comparable sales just so I know and I feel comfortable about what that value is. Before I actually buy a property, like buy a non-performing note, I order an actual BPO from, a broker price opinion from an actual realtor. Check for back taxes and liens quickly. I don't spend a lot of time doing this. I go in and I assume I like it when the person who sent me the note tape already has this on, so I don't have to guess. Again, this is something that's going to be in due diligence, but you can get the loan for less if you know about that. So I'm going to take you over. We're going to go look at that. Stop share, screen share. So this is kind of what, and this is from July, is when I got this. What do we got? We got 25 assets on here, not a ton. So the first thing I do is I highlight everything, and I like to sort by property state. So I'm going to go here and sort by, I don't want to sort by column A. I usually typically do this in Excel, and I just downloaded this for y'all. Sort range. There we go. So I'm going to sort by column B or column D. Data has header row, and we're just going to sort this. So looking at all of these, I've got a couple in Florida. Love that. There's a Georgia, couple Illinois. All of these look great. I don't want any of these. Definitely don't want New Jersey. New Jersey blows. And oh, look, I got 3 Texas down here. El Paso County, but El Paso, Houston, and then Eagle Pass, which is kind of cool. I've actually heard of all 3 of those places. So the first thing I do is that. Then I just start going in and I go, okay, do I want Vermont? No. Do I want this? No. And so I go in and I'm just gonna go in and delete my rows. Allentown, Pennsylvania, God, no. So I just kind of go in and I just start sorting out until I get the final sheet to have just the ones I want, which I think I can just quickly do that here. So boom. So now I've taken it from 25 and I'm already down to 9. So that makes this a lot more manageable. And these are all things, I know that I would either like them or not. Here's your estimated value. First thing I'm going to ask, why is this thing in yellow? There's no idea. I also like looking at legal status. God, I hate bankruptcies. And some people love bankruptcies. Obviously, we've got active BK payments. The nice thing about BKs is that if they stop making payments, that you can move to foreclosure right away. But again, looking at this estimated value and looking at your unpaid principal balance, instantly, which one's going to stand out is this one in Texas, because I'm looking at an unpaid principal balance of less than $20,000, and I've got an estimated value. Now, this is what is owed to the lender, the principal amount owed to the lender, but the estimated payoff. Now, this would be all your back payments, right? So they haven't made a payment for a while, but this estimated value is still worth 130. So obviously there is some great, equity there. Other places, this thing is worth 340 here, but its estimated payoff, if they were going to pay this off, is 455. Now, why is that fun? Whereas you're probably not going to get this Houston, Texas property back because there's so much equity in it. To these people, there's no equity in this thing. So if you can pick this thing up for, say, 60% of your unpaid principal balance, me looking at this estimated payoff, I know that, hey, I'm probably going to get them to either do a short sale, which its estimated value is 340. Maybe we can get it sold for say 300. I'd be thrilled with that. So again, this is, I did go after this one in Ohio. I did not get it, unfortunately. So, and again, you also can see a recovery strategy of what's going on with the property right now. Some of these are in foreclosure. Again, during a pandemic, how long is that going to take? The last thing that I always love to look at, because people are pretty amazed, is this paid through date. Notice that we have one here that's paid through 2012. This happens. Here's another one, 2011. So let's look at the 2011 one. This is in Calumet City, Illinois. Nothing has happened. So this is obviously somebody's trash, right? And they didn't want to work it out, or maybe they attempted to work it out. But yes, that person has been living in this property for it hasn't been foreclosed on for 10 years. Obviously, this would go to human nature. And I would say that the likelihood of getting them to reperform and ever pay would be slim to none. Looks like it's pending a tax sale. So, it's got all sorts of issues. Again, I didn't go after this one just because I see tax sale. There's going to be a lot of headaches getting this one back. But I do find that these older ones are pretty intriguing. A lot of times you'll find that they're vacated already. And if they're vacated already, it's very easy to get those properties back in most cases. So let's go back to the presentation. Share screen. All right. So making the offer. So you're going to look at that ARV and that unpaid principal balance. Choose the lower number. I don't care which one it is. So whatever in that ARV is the same thing as a BPO. Whatever that property's worth or that unpaid principal balance, you take the lower number. Offer 50 to 60% of lower number minus any back taxes or liens. This has been typical, historic, but since the pandemic, they've been wanting a lot more for this stuff. So it is, they're asking for 80%. Just remember, do the math. If you can make money and you're happy with what you can make, and you know that, hey, this thing is vacant, I can get this thing back in a matter of time, offering 80% might not be a bad thing. I can tell you, you're going to get a lot more of these if you do. How many did I win in other than these last two non-performing notes, which I got because I bought they were stuck in a package of performing mortgages. I have gotten none just because I'm, still offering, where I've always offered for these things. So again, just be patient and keep making offers. Obviously, you can't go pay 100% of a non-performing note because in some cases you can. However, if you get it reperforming, you've basically, you haven't made these extreme earnings that you can with non-performing notes. So it's when you get to pick these things up super cheap. I'm calling it super due diligence. After I get my offers accepted, so I've made these offers, I've gotten them accepted. Now I need to know what I really have. I do an official attorney title run. You can get them. There's a national company that you can call to get a state licensed real estate attorney, but make sure and get a title run done. This is going to tell you everything that's on there to get clear title. Does this cost money? Yeah, it absolutely does. Utility bills, a lot of times I like to double check these, especially if it's something that's electronic and online. Call about your utility bills. Property and IRS taxes, these are super easy. Make sure you know what's owed. You're going to find this, you'll get a tax cert, and you'll get to know, okay, what property and is the borrower, do they have an IRS tax lien on them? It's a simple search, and simple search of that borrower to find that out. Any liens on property, this is going to be covered by your title run. Estimated foreclosure time and cost. This is where I go to Google, and then I get on Facebook and I find other investors, especially ones that are involved in owner finance, and I ask them, what's the estimated time to foreclose? How long does it usually take you to foreclose on something if they won't give you a deed in lieu? Remember, foreclosure is your last resort, but you need to know this ahead of time, and you need to figure in the cost to doing it and what your holding costs are going to be, even if it's just opportunity costs. You won't be able to, maybe all your money's tied up on this one property, so you might not be able to go buy something else. So just knowing what your estimated foreclosure time is for you, just in case they won't take cash for keys, will be a good thing. And then estimate repairs. Typically, you need to call and just find out, hey, about what are you charging dollar per square foot to rehab a house? Now, that is a very, very loose estimate. But right now, the cost of repairs is skyrocketed. Labor is tight. Labor market's tight. Our supply chains are broken. So the cost of materials, depending on what it is, in some cases gone up 2 and 3 times in the last year. So when you're estimating repairs, don't think, oh my gosh, I rehabbed a house and I spent $15, a square foot to rehab that thing. You need to be up, going, okay, it's going to cost me more, $25 or $30 a foot. Know that, because if you're paying too much for that non-performing note and you can't wholesale that property because the repairs will be too high, you need to know that now. And if you're going to go into it and you're going to do the repairs, hey, maybe you hold it as a long-term rental, not a bad idea. Maybe you sell it owner finance, also not a bad idea. But, if your only option is to sell this, to an investor when you're done with it, you need to know. And then you need to either, if any of these numbers don't work, you need to renegotiate or drop that note. And if you just say, hey, gosh, yeah, this popped up on the title run for it, and, it's just, the note is not even worth that amount that I'm willing to pay for it. So due diligence tips: don't waste time on the initial due diligence. The amount of offers that I put in, and I'm talking hundreds over the last, year and a half, and I didn't get them. So if I'm wasting hours doing this and not putting in offers, I'm not going to get very much. Bulk purchase equals higher discounts. Remember that. So if you're going in and you're offering, they've got a sheet of 25 and you really only want 20, go in and offer something for the whole thing. Make sure that, you're maybe paying, you have the 5 that you really don't want. Maybe you have them on your sheet marked at 0. And then you're not giving them very much in the whole grand scheme of things. But you can get higher discounts if you just go in and buy everything that's being sent. Bulk purchases also equal longer due diligence. If you just go in and offer one and they accept it, they're going to expect you to be able to close on that thing in like a week. However, if you go in and you've got 20 or 30 that you've got to do due diligence on, they're going to give you longer time. Once your initial offer is accepted, you have the sole right to that asset. So they've now said, okay, we're accepting your offer and we're going to give you 3 weeks to do all the due diligence on this package of notes. Well, great. You're not competing against anybody anymore. So, the offer is yours. Now, does that mean that somebody's not going to come in and offer more behind you? No, it doesn't mean that, but they're going to sell it to you as long as you complete your due diligence in the amount of time. So what to do with a non-performing note? 1, you have to legally send them a welcome letter, which are available online. Then you set up a call with your borrower. A lot of times with this, my note servicer does this. I use August REI, who I think everybody knows I love. And they send out the welcome letter and they set up a call with borrowers. Super nice. I don't have to do that. Once 60 days goes by, so you do have to wait 60 days legally by federal law to send them out a 20-day notice. So this is already not performing. Does that mean that all of a sudden you're going to buy the note and they're going to magically start paying when you set up with a new loan servicer? Maybe it happens. It did with the two that I just bought, but likelihood is no, they're not going to immediately start paying. So you've got to wait 60 days. And once that happens, then you can send them a 20-day notice to accelerate. Also something that my note servicer does. Once they miss that 20 days, right? So they haven't paid all of their arrears off in those 20 days and brought that loan current. That means that you can then go in and offer them their choices. And the only way you do a loan modification and refinance is if they are making some sort of payment. So maybe they didn't get totally caught up in their initial 60 days, but they're at least attempting something. I like to go in and talk about loan modification or refinance at that point. If they made no attempt, I convince the borrower to sell the property. So I go in and I tell them, hey, here are your options. You could refinance, but you now owe, instead of just owing $5,000 on all your back payments, you now owe $75,000. And they're like, but I don't have $75,000. Well, you could refinance if you wanted to keep your home. However, because of your bad payment history, it's going to be hard unless maybe you had a wealthy relative or something like that who would refinance you. They usually don't. And I said, okay, you could sell your house, but because you only have a couple weeks until the foreclosure date, you can't put it on just MLS. You need to go to one of those signs. Hey, I've got some investors who might be willing to buy that from you. Or I then offer them cash receipts. I said, or if you can't find one of those guys to buy it from you, I can give you, and usually it's a pre-notion. Typically I offer $1,000 or $2,000 to start. But if it's really, really valuable, I figure out, hey, I might be willing to go up to $5,000. But I'll give you, $2,000 in a cashier's check in 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks to be out of the property. All you have to do is broom sweep it. You don't have to do any repairs or anything. And you just sign the house back over to me. And right there is usually where I got them, because they're like, oh, well, that's so easy. I don't have to do repairs. I don't have to clean it. I just have to broom sweep it and get all my trash to the curb. And then they're going to give me $2,000, which is the deposit on their next place they live in. So it usually works really well. Deed in lieu cash for keys is my go-to. If all of this fails, foreclosure, if absolutely necessary, then eviction if necessary. And then once you either have the property back deed in lieu or foreclosure, you're going to resell it. And you can resell it as a wholesale deal to other investors, or you can rehab it, fix it up, and sell it on MLS to a retail buyer. You can keep the property as a rental. You can owner finance the property and create a brand new loan. So there's a lot of things you can do once you get that property back. So here's an example, and this is a pre-pandemic example. This is a note that I wholesaled, and I will tell you what the investor did with it. And the original balance on this loan was $90,000. 682, 8.35% interest rate. By the way, I see interest rates all over the board from like 2% all the way to like 18%. It's nuts. Last payment date, again, this is a couple of years old. I want to say that this was a 2019 deal. So he hadn't paid in 2 years or something like that. Unpaid principal balance was $78,875, and it was worth $98,000. So we're looking at this. We're going to take our lowest and we're going to pick the lesser of the two. So obviously, I did this at 50% and then sold it at 60%. And at 50% of unpaid principal balance, I paid $39,438. So going through this strategy, loan modification, We modified the loan balance, dropped it down, but raised the interest. Now, we raised the interest because note buyers like myself, I start discounting below 9% interest, like really heavily discounting. So you want to make sure that you've got a high enough interest rate that if you decide to sell this note down the road, that you're going to be able to get a good offer on your note. 70% or $70,000 loan balance, 9% interest, 30 years is $563.24, or your principal and interest per year is $6,758, which gives you a 17% return on investment. The way we figure it out, ROI, is I take whatever cash you brought in per year and you divide it by your purchase price that you're out on cash. Purchase price for this one, we're still here, BPORV, short sale, approved short sale quickly, short sale of $65,000. And this one came in at 25,562 profit. Divide 25,562 by 39, 438, and you get a 65% return on investment. This is where, the borrower comes to you and says, well, I could sell this thing today, but I need to sell it at this amount. And, you say yes. And then deed in lieu. The investor actually offered $5,000 cash for keys. It was accepted. Total investment was 44. And then they cleaned it up a little bit, put it on the market. Remember, it was worth 98. And they sold it retail, just stuck it right up on MLS, kind of wholetailed it in a way for $80,000. And they made a $35,000 profit. Whole thing, I think, took about 6 weeks because they just went and had an original call with the borrower and found out that they kind of wanted to move anyways. And so they're like, all right, well, you sign it back to me. I'll give you $5,000, because they said they needed moving. They needed money to move. And so that was what was decided, $5,000. And so he made a 90% return on his investment. It's pretty awesome. My Texas acquisitions, which are, these are not my current ones that I'm working on. I was going to put those in here, but then I still don't know how they're going to turn out. So I didn't have ends. This was purchased right before the pandemic. So we have note A. I didn't want this one. I was forced to buy 3 notes and I did not want them. The first one, note A, was a 3-1 mobile home on 7 acres. I hate mobile homes, but I can tell you right now, they make a ton of money. Purchase and back taxes were $5,500. I bought it and sold it owner finance for $70,000 with $7,000 down. Totally awesome. Made back all of my money. Note B, also did not want this piece of garbage mobile home. 4-bedroom, 2-bath mobile home on 4 acres. Purchase and back taxes $2,500. It was like, I forget, there was back taxes of like $1,000 or something like that. I don't know. I ended up, I think $1,200 and $1,300 was split almost equally. Sell owner finance, $50,000 down, just because it was less acreage, with $5,000 down, 10% down. Again, got all my money back, totally happy. Now, this is the house that I did want. I wanted this 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family house on 2 acres. It was super cute, a little older. I knew that all 3 of these were vacant because I had realtors drive by them. Purchase and back taxes were $8,000 for this one. I ended up being able to sell it for $90,000 with $9,000 down and with no money out of pocket. So I don't have, all of this. I have actual cash to show for it. And I have now just an approximate cash flow on all notes that are completely paid off with no underlying liens of $1,650 per month. So you can do this, especially if you do these. I had contemplated, hey, do I want to sell this 3rd one? I know that I'm never going to be able to really sell off these mobile homes. I'm not going to be able to borrow money with them. They're just staying in my portfolio. It's fine. This one, I'm contemplating maybe selling it. I could, if I needed to. it's still got like an $89,000 unpaid principal balance, $89,000 in change. So I could make quite a bit from it. So right now, that concludes my presentation on how to buy non-performing notes. And hopefully that kind of inspires you to what's out there and what you can buy, even if it's some cheap, disgusting notes that nobody seems to want to buy. If you know what you're doing, especially you have experience in owner financing, or you know some people you can talk to, it's a gold mine out there if you can pick up these non-performing notes. And I'm now doing this in and out of my Quest IRA accounts and quickly building up funds in both of those.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kristin. I love how deep you go into the data, and the fact that you're actually now doing this yourself in your IRA definitely shows that it's really possible for a lot of people to do that. So we do have time for just a few questions here. We may not have time for all of the questions, but we'll definitely try to answer as many as we can.
And, especially if this is on Facebook, I've already shared it to my Facebook page. If you get in there and start asking me questions, especially if you go to my Facebook page and see it and ask questions right there directly on it, I'll go ahead and just start answering questions below it.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Awesome. Perfect. So I really like this question. One of our attendees wants to know, many states are now requiring a license to own residential debt in their state. How do investors find out what will be required to get licensed?
I go to the Google. This is true that, and again, this is before you go buy any non-performing note, go Google what's going on in that state. If it's a brand new state, and even if it's not, the other thing you need to know is, don't service these yourself. Never service any of your notes. I'm sure there's somebody sitting out there right now that's servicing a note themselves, and you shouldn't be. I guarantee you're doing it wrong. You're missing some form of compliance. So always have a third-party licensed note servicer doing this. Amazingly, that's a loophole for a lot of those loans. Not all of them, not all of those states. But if you're using a licensed note servicer, you can get away with a heck of a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Awesome. This is an interesting question here. Do you have to ask for an option period on your offers to get time for due diligence?
No. And so once your offer is accepted, it's yours. They'll say, I'm like, okay, so can I have 3 weeks? Hey, this is 20 of them. Can I get 3 weeks to look over this? Yes. If you're buying 1 or 2, you're going to have to move a lot faster. Typically more like, 5 to 7 days. But again, all of those are different, and every bank, every asset manager that I deal with is different.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. This is a long one, but I think it's a good question. With most of the loans held by financial institutions having equity above the UPB, why would the bank want to sell the non-performing loan rather than do a loan modification or foreclose and short sale? Why wouldn't the borrower just sell it and reap the equity to avoid foreclosure?
Whoever asked this question, do you remember 2008? And that was a big question going on there. Why would people be putting their head in the sand? Why are we having to ever rescue somebody from foreclosure? Why are we rescuing people from foreclosure now? Why are foreclosures needing to be legally stopped, the Monday before the auction date? People, homeowners, when they're getting these calls, a lot of times they just turn off the phone and they stop answering the calls and they bury their head in the sand and they think this is all going to go away. When you're dealing with these large financial institutions, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Do you know, banks fail every year. And depending on what's going on in the economy, you've got bank regulators coming in and looking at, all right, how many loans do you have? How many loans are current? How many are not current? They have to have so much on deposit to cover those loans to remain FDIC insured. And so if they need to quickly get rid of some of this stuff, like in the next couple of weeks, selling off the non-performing notes is the way to go for them. Can they necessarily even get that homeowner to talk to them? No. So if they can't get the homeowner to talk to them, how are they going to convince them to do a short sale? And the bank can't force the homeowner to go sell his house. All the bank can do that's in their control is to sell that loan. So they can either sell it today as a non-performing asset, or they can wait possibly months to be able to foreclose on them. Because remember, the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures was just raised. And so really you're looking at, that's why I like to go and see how many of those loans are Fannie and Freddie backed. If it's backed by the government, that loan's just going to be charged off and moved over to the federal government. You're not going to get a crack at it. But for anything that they're holding on their own portfolio, when that percentage of non-performing notes starts to creep up, they might not have enough on deposits that month. And if their bank examiner comes in to check on that, they're going to have to sell and sell quickly. It happens every month. Hopefully that explained that.
Oh, yes, that was a great answer. Let's see here. And I know you mentioned this, but it's always a question that comes in. Could you repeat who you use for note servicing, and are they nationwide?
So I use August REI. They are not 100% nationwide. I know they're working on it. I want to say, I think they're in probably 15, 20 states. And again, if you're going to buy a bunch of these, I know that they will quickly get their certification. Like, let's say that you're an existing customer. I know I've been told, like I was looking at a bunch in Indiana, which I did not buy, but I said, hey, do you service there? And they're like, no. And I was like, okay, well, what will it take to get you to service there? And they said, yeah, just give us a couple weeks to do all the filing and stuff like that. So they will do it if you ask them, and you've got enough to make it worth their while.
Mm-hmm. Nice. This next one is an IRA related question, but I'm going to go ahead and answer it really quick. One of our attendees asked, wouldn't making a call to my borrower trigger a violation for my IRA? This would be similar to doing the work myself on a property. And the answer to that is no. So you, as the IRA account holder, you can make all of the investment decisions for your IRA. You are a fiduciary to your IRA account. So it is up to you to kind of manage your investment. That involves calling your borrower. That's totally fine. What you wouldn't want to do is go out to the property and build the fence yourself or paint the property yourself. That would get you, a little bit more into a prohibited transaction type of thing. But I did just want to go ahead and answer that one because I thought that was a good question. But
and let me add to that.
Yeah,
it's a great reason why notes are ideal for IRAs, because either notes or lending, because you are making a call. Are there times where I have to have my note servicer call for me? Yes, especially if they don't speak English. That does happen. But majority of the time, you can do it. And as long as you're not going and swinging a hammer. But remember, you don't own that property. You own the piece of paper that secures the debt to that property. So it's a completely different mindset when dealing with your IRA.
Definitely. And we had a few other questions, but I will let you guys know they weren't really note related. So Kristin, I'm not really sure how well you'd be able to answer them. But guys, if you have more questions, reach out to Quest. We are super easy to get a hold of. We can kind of help to point you in the right direction there. And Kristin, before we sign off for today, do you have any last kind of, words or piece of advice for our audience out there if they're looking to get into notes within this next year?
I just gave you my free resource that I use, like how to go out and find this stuff on your own. Do that. Don't go and use somebody else's list that came off of Facebook, because guess what? I'm sent that list about 6 to 10 times. Somebody's like, oh, are you looking for this? And I'm like, oh yeah, probably send me what you've got. And it's all the same stuff. Whereas if you go out and find it yourself, there's a lot of times where you're going to have that one-on-one relationship, and maybe nobody else has called that asset manager that day, this month, and you've got the only access to these notes. So whether you're going to pick them up for yourself, you're going to go in and you're going to go, all right, I'm going to get 6 of these under contract. I'm going to wholesale 5 of them. I'm going to keep 1 for myself that's free and clear so that I don't have to worry about borrowing any money. It's a great way to quickly build some profits in your IRA.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great note to kind of no pun intended, to end today's class on. Kristin, thank you so much for joining us today. You shared a lot of great information, a lot of nice data walkthroughs, which I love the technical aspect of that. So you guys can rewatch today's class as well as all of our other classes on YouTube, on our Facebook. Kristin has shared it to her Facebook as well. So if you think of more questions when you're watching that replay, just ask them there and she'll get them answered. And I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend and you all have a great day. We'll see you at our next webinar. Bye. See ya.